Hi, this is Mark Arnold with
Hi.
another episode of Fun Ideas Podcast, and I have a returning guest, Mark Slade, because he and I are working on a book on Marvel's Crazy Magazine, and we have a person here who wrote for Crazy Magazine, Mr. Paul Kupperberg. How are you, sir?
Good. How you doing?
Very good.
Hey, how you doing,
I
Paul?
I am well. All is good. Thanks.
Good. Cool. All
So
right.
I guess I'll start off, and Mark might have some of these same questions, but I'll do the first question, then he can take it from there. Is just basically tell us a little bit about yourself and then how you ended up with Marvel and then how you ended up with Crazy and um, you know, in a short brief.
Sure. Well, I'm a lifelong comic book fan. I mean, that literally, I don't remember a time in my life when comic books weren't around, even before I could read. And I grew up with that and found my way into fandom in the late '60s and early '70s. Met a kid in the neighborhood named Paul Levitz who also liked comic books, and we started publishing fanzines in the early '70s and parlayed that by the mid '70s into careers in comics, and been doing that ever since. God help me. And uh, Marvel was kind of just a stupid accident. I was always a DC kid, and Marvel was never really a goal for me. I mean, later on I tried because expand your marketplace and make more money.
Right.
But uh, as far as that went, my brother Alan, my older brother Alan, was an artist who was already drawing for Crazy Magazine,
Hmm.
and um, he had gotten an assignment to do the parody of a new action movie coming out called Star Wars. For whatever reason, he turned to me to write it,
Hmm.
which is unusual because we didn't collaborate much. But anyway, I wrote the script for this. So anyway, I got a call from Larry. We had gotten to know each other a little bit. I guess this is about 1978 or so. After the DC implosion, Larry was laid off from DC with the DC implosion in '78, and he went to Marvel, and he took over editing Crazy. And welcome back.
Welcome back.
And I see you're wearing Alan's Obnoxious
Oh yes,
shirt.
yes.
Uh, but So Larry, we had gotten to know each other. I guess he recognized that I had a sort of a sense of humor, and that I had written for the magazine before. So, and also Marv was supposed to write the parody of Apocalypse Now,
Hmm.
and uh, uh, he had some kind of scheduling conflict or something, so he dropped out. And and all that. So, but it was Apocalypse Now Land, which was uh, they were disguised as a riverboat full of tourists because the Geneva Convention forbids attacking tourists. Um, I don't know, but anyway, so I did that. Bob McLeod drew that, as I recall.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah, really
Yes.
nice
Awesome.
job. Yeah, he did a lot of stuff for Crazy.
Yeah.
Um, and then after that, I just started getting the regular, I had the regular gig of writing the movie parodies. I think I did it for close to, I don't know, 2.5 years, I think.
Hmm.
Um, It
Cool.
was weird too because during that time, I moved from New York to Chicago, and then from Chicago back to New York. And at the time, to work at DC, I had a staff job at DC, working in their business department. I was I was doing I was liaisoning with comic shops and doing promotion and advertising under Joe Orlando was for some odd reason running the department.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, no, Joe is a wonderful artist and a great guy, and I loved him dearly and all that. But it's like, why is Joe Orlando in charge of a business department? But um, uh, uh, oh yeah, so even when I went back on staff at DC, it was like I went, oh man, shit, I'm going to lose the crazy gig, which is great because it paid like half again my regular page rate at DC. And so I was, moaning to Paul Levitz, who, was the boss of my boss. And he went, well, it's Crazy Magazine. We don't have anything that competes with it. So you can keep the job. I was on staff at DC and freelancing at Marvel, which was an unusual situation. But yeah, so I did that for like 2.5 years. Did a lot of movies. Did a couple of more Star Wars parodies. I did The Shining, Conan the Barbarian. Just a ton of the Black Hole.
Yeah,
I
I
mean, it
remember.
was it was all yeah, it was all like it was all Mad Magazine. I was doing straight up Mad Magazine.
Mhm.
In fact,
Right.
at first I was doing straight up Mad Magazine ripoffs. I was stealing mercilessly from the first 23 issues of Mad Comics. Their movie and comic strip parodies. In fact, it got to the point where I was lifting whole characters and bits straight out of the Dragnet parody from the comic, and using it in the parody of American Gigolo.
Hmm.
This,
I'll have to reread that one.
American Giggler, I think it was.
Mhm.
But so I had this Jack Webb character, running, chasing after it's a cop chasing after him with the whole band playing the Dragnet theme, following up, just straight up rip off. And that's when I realized I could probably, pull back a little. But yeah, it was all, crazy. It was all very mad influence. But uh, like Larry and I had this very brief exchange on Facebook the other day, um, that Mad never would have done a lot of the stuff that Crazy did. Mad never would have printed the Brownstones. Mad never would have printed Gaspar the Dead Baby.
Yeah.
I mean
Oh
that.
yeah, that's true.
So really, Crazy had become kind of the counterculture to Mad's mainstream culture at that point.
Mhm.
Which
So
I think was Steve Gerber and Marv Wolfman's idea of crazy,
yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. I mean, I
was
was
to be
kind
the
of
counterculture.
yeah. I mean, I was nibbling around the edges of Crazy in the very early days. I was friends with the guy named Duffy Voland, who worked in Marvel's production department, and I would help him do all kinds of stuff. I cut Ruby lift for the color separations for issues of Boom magazine, that he was assigned to do, and Ghost wrote articles for him, and um, I had a point to this to begin with. Oh, right, and Duffy got the assignment to write the letter column for the first Crazy annual. Um,
Oh wow.
yeah, so we wrote that together. We were sitting around like coming up with these Dear Abby kind of letters and stuff, and tossing out funny shit, and just riffing on it and just writing up the best stuff. So I've always had that sensibility. My one of my early Stop me with questions if you have them. One of my earliest influences was a comedy writer named Jack Douglas, who you familiar with him?
I've seen comedy albums. I think I've seen him on a few different talk
Yeah,
shows from the past.
yeah, he was a lot. He was on Jack Parr a lot and
Yeah.
Johnny Carson. He had a Japanese wife named Rico,
Hmm.
and later on the whole bit was she didn't speak English, she didn't speak Japanese, and he wrote books about their life together and all that. But he was a writer on the Jack Parr show. He was a writer on forget if it was To Tell the Truth or I've Got a Secret, one of those. He did
Hmm.
a lot of game show writing. But he also wrote a couple. He wrote essays. He wrote short. Originally wrote these short pieces, and they were published in two very slender volumes. One was Never Trust a Naked Bus Driver, and the other was my brother was an only child. And these were just short little, 1, 2, 3 page stories mostly, setups, gags. But it just when I first read them in the early 60s, when I was, mid 60s, when I was 10, 11, 12 years old, funniest friggin' stuff I had ever read. Um, and it's all absurdist. It's all, absurd
Hmm.
stuff. It's, some of it makes, is just wacky for wacky, like, Jonathan Winters or
Hmm.
Right.
what's his name? Mork, um,
Oh, Robin Williams. Yeah. Yeah.
Robin Williams. Yeah, just like just keeps going. And if you throw enough of it out fast enough, you're going to hit something funny and just keep going.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so that stuff is right up my alley.
And another comedian that's like that is Stephen Wright.
Oh yeah, yeah. I remember the first time I saw Stephen Wright.
Hmm.
Just like one of his jokes was, I made instant coffee in my microwave oven and I went back in time. That's brilliant. His
It's good.
line.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, no, I love that stuff. I love guys who don't make sense,
Hmm.
because
Yeah.
it goes off to, I mean, I grew up on like, Brother Theodore and
Oh, yes.
Professor Irwin Corey.
Hmm.
Or was it Irwin Corey? Professor Corey. Yeah, Irwin
Yep.
Corey.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it sounds like the name of a ship in a folk song. And it went down on the Irwin Corey. But
So on
uh,
the movie parodies that you did at Crazy, how did that work? Did you get photos and stuff to work from or anything? Did you just pay your own wage or whatever, or pay
yeah,
your own entrance into
we
the
didn't.
movies? Yeah.
There was no advanced stuff. There was no screenings. It was just like, the movie came out. I went to see it as soon as possible, and took notes in the dark, and went home and wrote it. I mean, I don't recall ever seeing a movie a second time. A lot of them I didn't want to see a second time. Because, once seeing The Shining is just plenty for me. Thank you. And it was also I saw The Shining. I was living in Chicago at the time, and it was playing at the Chicago Theater, which is now an elegant movie palace, and a place like the Radio City Music Hall. It's staged. They renovated it. It's gorgeous. But in 1979 or 80, when I went to see The Shining, it was a rat infested hole, and I literally sat through the entire movie with my feet up on the seat in front of me because there were rats running through it. Could have left because I'm a big pussy, but I really had to see the movie to write this thing, and I needed the money.
That's a
Uh,
real horror movie.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'm no big fan of horror to begin with, so
Yeah, yeah.
I don't like it. I think it's predictable and but that's what I do for a living. So it's like I know when the cat's going to jump in the window because
Yeah, yeah.
that's my job.
Now, which movies did you choose? I mean, you mentioned The
I didn't
Shining.
choose. I
Oh.
usually didn't choose. It was usually Larry saying, "Why don't you go see The Shining?" Okay. Um, I did a horrible Larry Hama impersonation. You need Christopher Priest, the former Jim Owsley.
Yeah.
He does a great Hama. But yeah, it would usually be that. It would usually be Larry, and sometimes like I did Pennies from Heaven, the Steve Martin movie,
Hmm.
which is based on a vastly superior British TV series.
Hmm.
Uh, but uh, I did that, and I wrote the whole parody, and I wrote song parodies because it was it was a musical, so I wrote song parodies, and I did whole, and it's like the last minute, is like, no, we're not going to do that because nobody's going to see this movie. So I had to do something else. I forget
Hmm.
what I think I did. I might have done, what was it? The Haunting? Is that the movie with Ray Milland and a lot of
Yeah.
yeah. I think I did that with a
Yeah,
couple of coming attractions at the end, like for Reds and other movies. But yeah, so occasionally something went so far as to be scripted but not used.
Hmm. The other thing
sometimes
go ahead.
I was just going to say, sometimes the movies are so bad that they help you out with the
Oh
parody.
yeah, oh yeah, yeah. I did Conan. What are the Conan movies? I forget. I think it was Conan the Destroyer.
The first one,
It was the first one.
probably the first one.
It was I remember doing Conan because it was Bob Camp did the pencils, but Marie Severin inked it.
Yeah.
And it was just it was gorgeous. Bob Camp got to start like his first comic book story was one of my parodies in Crazy, and he had to become the regular guy, and now he of course Emmy award winning Ren and Stimpy and all that stuff. Great guy and just a funny cartoonist. So um, I worked a lot. He did a lot of those over. He kind of became the regular artist on the parodies at some point.
Yeah, near the end. The other thing you did regularly was like a double page spread, a crazy looks at something or other,
Yes,
with Ned Sontag. How did those come about? Did you just like,
again, Larry said we need you want to do a double page, thing. Let's do, what are these? They wanted to do. I think the idea was kind of to have like a Dave Berg
yeah,
set idea, but
Right.
didn't want to do that same format. So instead, we just, they decided let's just do the double page spread, and we can fit. I guess must have been about a dozen gags or so onto the spread. So you got the same amount of humor, but with a different format. Yeah, those were fun. I mean, they're a bitch to write. You have to come up with these jokes. They're just kind of like boom, boom, boom. It's kind of like a monologue. You're just spewing out lines. So, but it was fun. And again, it was a really good page rate. So.
Well, it's telling me here we have about 10 minutes to go. So if Mark has some other questions, I will give him the floor. So go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, he answered just about every question I had,
Oh,
which is
okay.
great. But
Wind me up and get me going.
let me ask you, how was it to work with Larry Hama, and what was the editorship different from Lakin's?
Well, Lakin, it was just kind of more of a a professional kind of
Right. Little
relationship.
stiff.
Yeah, it was a little stiff. There wasn't, he was an older guy and kind of, I mean, I knew who he was. He was intimidating. He had a history of, of editing. What did he do? Sick or cracked or?
Well, he did them all,
Yeah.
at various times. Yeah,
yeah. I think he even worked for Mad, if I recall.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
yeah. So this guy was not a slouch. But he also wasn't the right guy to edit that magazine. He was, no, it's just look. I loved Mad Magazine, and I loved the editorial staff at Mad Magazine. I just loved those guys. I loved Nick Ficara and all the just wonderful group. I worked a lot with them when I was on staff at DC, and when I was in the licensed publishing department. And in fact, it got to a point where like I'd come down for something and they'd be in an editorial meeting and they'd let me sit in and contribute jokes and throw out jokes in. It's like they never used anything,
wow.
but they had me in, and but these were 60-year-old guys doing a magazine for 15-year-olds, for rebellious 15-year-olds. And even though these were rebellious 60-year-old guys, I'm a rebellious 70-year-old guy, but I would not presume to edit a magazine for middle school.
Right.
So there. Oh, and Larry, Larry's just a favorite person of mine in the comics business. He's a talented guy who doesn't get nearly enough due for his work because he was like stuck on G.I. Joe all those years. but he created a body of work that, that's enviable. And he's got a wicked sense of humor. And between him
Right.
and Owsley, and Owsley slash Priest,
Mhm.
it was hysterical. They were pals. I'm still friends with Priest. I worked together with him at DC in the 90s, and he's written for me. I wrote for him. In
Mhm.
fact, I interviewed him for my upcoming book, Direct Creativity. He's one of the people I interviewed. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. It was just, and a rare chance to spend a
Cool.
little time up at Marvel, because again, mostly DC for me.
At this point,
I just have one more
oh, go
question.
ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
One more question. In this political climate, do you think a satirical magazine could survive?
I think it could. Well, I don't know if any magazine could survive in this,
Right, right.
not political climate, just in this current state of affairs in publishing. But there's always room for satire.
Mhm.
Look at what happened with The
Right.
Onion. Randy Rainbow exploded.
Mhm.
Once he started making fun of Trump. There's plenty of room for there's always room for satire, because everything is fucking funny.
So
Exactly. Exactly.
at this point, do you are you still making personal appearances or doing any signings or anything like that at this
Well,
time?
I do. I appear every year at Terrificon in the Mohegan Sun in Connecticut. I might do small local shows. I'm not a big. I don't like traveling,
Fair
and
enough.
also, it's like, to do shows to make it worthwhile, I would have to bring 100 pounds of books with me, which is not conducive to long distance schlepping. So you know, but I do have a website, and if people are interested in my stuff, they can contact me through that, and I sell my books online,
Cool.
and so available on Amazon. And you know, it's uh, it's the brave new world of self-publishing.
Mhm.
Have you already published your biography in comics?
That I'm going to be publishing later this year. It's written,
Cool.
yeah.
Okay.
It's called
Okay.
Panel by Panel, and it covers my my career, starting as a fan and going through my years of writing comics. And yeah, I'm going to be publishing it. I'm currently uh, getting out my current book, called Direct Creativity, which is interviews with 17
Right.
people, including, like I said, Priest, and Mark Wade, and Jerry Conway, and Chuck Patton, and Mindy Newell, and a whole bunch of people. And after that, I'm going to turn my attention to um, uh, you know, polishing up the memoir and getting that to the proofreader and stuff. And hopefully, I'll have a Kickstarter going for it in June.
Okay.
Cool. Mark,
Let's
we'll have to have you back on.
yes.
Oh, anytime.
Let's wrap it up with we have like about 3 minutes. If you could say some memories of your brother Alan, just what was he
Okay.
like, and
No, I didn't. So let's cut that out.
oh, you don't want to say
No, no,
anything.
no,
Okay. No, that's
no.
fine. Okay. Uh Perfectly fine. All right. Well, I mean, it was a pleasure having you on the show today, Paul, and
A lot of fun.
I really enjoy all your writing and everything like that. I mean, crazy and other things. I mean, I read DC Comics for years as well, so it wasn't just crazy.
As every well-read person should. So
Yes. And Mark, if you have any last things to say or anything before we go.
Just thank you, Paul, for doing this, and I really enjoyed your work as well. Appreciate it. Thank you.
thank you.
All right, and that wraps it up with another episode of Fun Ideas Podcast. And this is your host, Mark Arnold, and we will see you next time. All right.